Hello everybody, and a warm welcome to the September version of the Mobile IT Community of Interest.
The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
The session will be delivered by Link Connect, and it's the Smart Hub for Site Deployment, delivered by Graham McLean. I'll get on to Graham's intro in a second. But thank you very much for joining us today. Just before we get started, I'd like to review with you, for those that are new to the GoToWebinar system and the mobile IT community, just how to optimize your experience today. I'll briefly explain how to use the system. You've got audio controls there on the right, and you can minimize to clear the screen and see a bit more of what's being presented. Everybody is currently set to default mute due to lots of participants on the call. You can get audio over the telephone if you prefer, or the speakers on your computer. It will hide automatically if you leave it for a few seconds. I would encourage you to forward any questions that come up during the presentation using the questions tab. Your questions will be read afterwards and after the presentation. And there are some poll questions as well later, which Graham will mention. At the end of the meeting, we'll have a follow-up survey, and I would ask if you could participate in that, if at all possible. We'd love to have your feedback, and we can incorporate that into the work of the community going forwards. Okay, so I'll now move into the first slide about the community. The objective of our community of interest is to showcase the mobility solutions that will or have been adopted in the capital projects industry. We strive to achieve the goal by presenting the latest use cases of mobile IT and the adoption of it, and also allowing the breadth of our community participants to expose their perspective on these technology applications. Hello, Graham, can you hear me? Graham, can you hear me? Can you hear me, Graham? Hello, Graham, can you hear me?
I can now. You disappeared.
Right, sorry, I'll repeat that. I'll repeat that slide. 1 second.
So, okay, I'm also not seeing the slides at the moment. There we go, that's better.
Okay, so the objective of the community is to showcase the mobility solutions that will or have been adopted in the capital projects industry. We've been delivering use cases and industry perspectives through the various channels, including the monthly meetings such as this one, some virtual and live discussions, documentation and reports from these gatherings, but also by facilitating the creation of research and development projects within both organisations. The community is a partnership venture between FIATech and Comet, FearTech, as a lot of you will know, is a member-based organisation with an objective of improving the productivity of the capital projects industry through the deployment of this technology. And the goal is to improve the productivity of the capital projects sector through the leadership in global development and the adoption of innovation practice. COMET is also a member-based organisation in the UK. Its principal aim is to learn from the experience of delivering measurable business benefits, both in terms of adoption of mobile AT technologies and the sharing of its learning. The partnership supports the work and objectives of this community. So who's in the community? The community of interest in it has been running for just over 3.5 years now. We have more than 500 organisations located in 56 countries. Across the globe, we're beginning to attract regular participation now from Asia, South America and elsewhere. The industry's response has been good so far, and we're continuously working with our member participants and those outside the normal groups to meet the needs of our participants and share the learnings from other organisations. I'm going to talk a little bit now about productivity advancement targets. This is an initiative within FearTech. They're receiving considerable attention in the capital projects world because they represent a unique and holistic way to drive sustainable productivity improvements, which is propelled by economic value and direct leadership from owners and EPCs. Organisations are constantly struggling to establish systems thinking approaches to how work is defined and performed in hopes of becoming more efficient and more effective. The massive scale, complexity, short life cycle and subtle stakeholder dependencies has made a sustainable solution difficult to find or as a major barrier. With that in mind, FearTech members are rethinking why compelling improvements with the potential for significant industry benefits emerge with enthusiastic interest only to rapidly fade away later. FearTech members believe that these productivity advancement targets, if fully delivered, could save the industry over 25% of every unit of currency, either in dollars, pounds, or whatever, in investment, plus a 10% saving of project cycle time. So the productivity advancement target that pertains to mobile IT is this one, and it's known as PAT9, and through the automated field data collection and control, it could, if realised fully, enable a 40% improvement in efficiency. That's the cycle time reduction of field data collection or information access. It links very nicely, as I mentioned at the beginning there, it links very nicely into today's session, but there are more PATs, and as we say, FearTech, there is a PAT for that, and these are the other areas where PATs are could be attributed. Okay, so just moving along now, talk about the main presentation. I'll hand over to Graham in a second. Graham will take us through the slides for today. But this is about deploying much needed connectivity to project sites and offers 7 key benefits. Now, about Graham, over 10 years with a leading organisation providing mission critical infrastructure as a service, with significant site deployment experience that Graham has, including working on the 2012 London Olympics and deploying solutions to the Crossrail project in the UK. Graham's IT infrastructure service skills for network service include cybersecurity, cloud computing, VoIP, all mission critical, not add value, but helps business with business applications and operations they support. Now, I'll hand over to you, Graham.
Thank you.
And give you keyboard control. Just bear with me 1 second. Okay, all yours, Graham.
Thank you very much, Stuart, and thank you to everybody for your participation in what I hope will be an informative and fun session. As Stuart says, I'm managing director for a company called Link Connect. We're an IT services business, managed IT services, and while construction isn't our only industry, it's probably our most defined vertical, primarily because there's an open door here. There's a recurring problem that construction companies, we find, need agility in terms of setting up new sites, closing down sites, reusing of equipment, it's as I'm sure many of you know, can be a very variable feast. You know, occasionally it's easy, often it's not so easy, and sometimes it's downright difficult to actually get any kind of service to site. So we've worked over the last 10 years with most of the major companies in the UK, the BAMs, the Lango Rorts, the Bar Hales, the Vinches, helping them to a greater or lesser extent, sometimes just as a masterclass on a couple of sites, and sometimes as sort of the go-to place for all of the services. So we've got some experience in this space, and what I want to share with you is the solution we've put together, which we call Smart Hub, and how it addresses the initial problem of site setup, but more than that, much more than that. Just a little bit about Link Connect. Sorry, what we'll cover is a little bit about the company, where we've come from, where we're going, the product itself, Smart Hub, and then there'll be a chance at the end to ask questions. I think Stuart did suggest if you've got questions along the way, by all means fire them in and we'll collate them and then answer them at the end of the presentations, and there'll also be some poll questions at the end of the presentation. So as Stuart said, we see ourselves as a supplier of mission critical IT infrastructure as a service. Our experience is largely in the UK, not exclusively. We do have a number of companies who've got international sites, and we can manage all of those from the same knock here in Farnham, which is 30 miles southwest of London. Four key tenants: network services, yes, cybersecurity, cloud computing, and hosted telephony. The key to what we do is you know, we work in what can be considered a very crowded market in many respects, but our modus operandi is to really get close to customers and really be an extension of your business. So we are tailoring the services and the solutions to fit your business critical needs. So if it's imperative that you don't go out for a second, then we understand how to build resilient solutions. If it's imperative you spend not much money, we can put together less robust but budget fitting kind of solutions. And what we've done is identified what we believe to be best of breed products in terms of carriers, in terms of security, in terms of network management, to enable us to do a sort of a rinse and repeat, albeit tailored to your particular needs. Fundamental here is that about half of the IT budget, I would suggest, is spent on IT infrastructure. The other half is spent on business systems, which I think add the value to your businesses. And the IT infrastructure, whether you're construction or a school or a retailer or a manufacturer, are fundamentally the same building blocks. So half the budget going on things which are common across most businesses. I would suggest that most of the pain with IT, because it's fantastic when it works, and it's not so fantastic when it doesn't work, but when those outages and those problems happen, it's largely down to the infrastructure side, sometimes of course the software. And the infrastructure itself, on its own, is no value. It is absolutely mission critical, but it has no value in its own right. Where the value is in the business systems, things that add value to your business. So our positioning is, let us run the infrastructure for you and let you concentrate your time and your efforts on things that would add value to your own business. And this is absolutely true in deploying to construction sites, where speed of deployment and scalability and reliability are absolutely critical. So we've developed this solution called Smart Hub. 7 benefits, and it started from how to be agile, how to get sites up and running really quickly. but it's evolved over time, because it's not just about getting there quickly, it's then about being able to scale, because day one is a small number of employees, but by day 30 and day 60, that number can increase and increase. So scalability becomes important. High availability, always on is critical. And knowledge and control I will cover. In fact, all these I'll cover in a bit more detail. What I mean by knowledge and control is actually understanding who is doing what across what can be precious corporate infrastructure. The ability to manage the assets, reuse them, and get the best return on the investment. And the ability to plug and play. And what I mean by that is that it needs to be a simple process once this box of tricks arrives on site, that it's add power, ET phone home, and we're away, up and running. And yes, it's a fully managed service, so you don't have to. And what I'll do is just cover each of those in a little bit more detail, and hopefully it will trigger some thoughts and questions and challenges. So as you get those, please do fire them in. So rapid site, what's the issue here? I've been there many times. Graham, we're about to win this new project. It's a lovely football stadium, which you're going to be building. It's a big project. There's lots of people on site. Well, if you know you're going to win it, order some services, because there's a lead time to get anything into site to support your activities. Well, yeah, but we can't order till we've won it, because there's no project code, there's no contracting in place. And then, hey presto, the contract is signed, and yes, we're away, and now we need to be on site tomorrow. And the first 4 or 5 construction staff are heading down site to set up. But of course, there's a lead time from doing that to getting any ground services typically connected. Now I'll come on to how we've addressed that particular problem as we go through. The other issue I mentioned earlier is that it's all very well having some kind of light touch solution that's quickly there, and will cover the first few people on site, but after the first month is not fit for purpose, because there's more and more staff, there's more and more usage, and now the bandwidth just isn't sufficient to support the business needs. So how do we then scale this connectivity without having to do wholesale changes of reconfiguring the whole IT, changing IP addresses, and the other complexities that go when you change from one to another? And how do you make it highly available? And what I'll do is cover those last 3 subjects through the pictures here. So what we do with Smart Hub is it is pre-lit, if you like, with dual 4G connectivity circuits. So when it arrives to site, you've got a WAN link across the air through 4G or 3G, depending on what's available. Typically, we'll use different carriers. So in the UK, EE and Vodafone are normal starting points, so that you've got resilience across the carriers, and you're also not creating your own contention within the local cell. Smart Hub is configured so that when you plug it in, the 4Gs should do the WAN link, and then you've got immediate Wi-Fi capability across the construction site. And inside the Smart Hub will be a switch so that you can actually hardwire into either local LAN or attach your local machines, your printer, VoIP phones, or whatever it would be. So this sort of addresses the rapid site. So it literally is the Smart Hub turns up on site, you just add power, and you've got an immediate connection back to base. What's happened on the right hand side of the picture is this works because we're doing this as not as a tactical immediate hire. This is a working relationship. So we will have worked out with the customer how we then tie our core network back to head office. So that's either a dedicated link between our network and the corporate network of the customer, or it can be a VPN across the internet, or in most cases both. So again, you're building resilience into the mix. For some sites where even 4G is perhaps limited, or the ground services are going to be very limited, we could add satellite. And of course, we can add ground services as we go. Now, the ground services we accept might take a little time to deliver, so the principle being that the 4G take the strain whilst we are backfilling with the ground services. An important point here is whilst we're adding multiple links, to the users on site, they behave as a single link. So we're aggregating the bandwidth from the satellite and the 4G and the second 4G and the ADSL and the FTTC or whatever services we're putting in. We're not pinning particular users, we're not pinning particular services to any of those links. The traffic is automatically balanced across all of those links. Should one go out, then of course it's just out of the mix in terms of what can be used, so the lights might dim a little, but they should never go out, and there won't be particular services that or particular users that get affected. That sort of covers the rapid site with the 4G and the scalability that we can then add multiple links. And there isn't really a limit to how many, and I've drawn 5 there. We've had sites with up to 10 links and servicing the site and load balancing across. Typically, if you need that many, it would be advisable to go to fibre kind of connectivity, but it's not always possible. And that's where this kind of multi-link certainly plays to more remote locations. Other things that we have experienced, and I'll tell you this via a little story. So there was a site we did with Interserve, sorry, not Interserve, with Galliford Try. It was a site office that had been in play for about 4 years on a 5-year framework contract. For whatever reason, the project office had to move from what was a brick building, and the only solution they could find was to put them into porta cabins on a car park right next to a reservoir, which was a very remote location. Lead time to get a fibre in would be 3 months minimum, probably more. Excess construction costs to get fibre to that site would be huge, and probably add another 3 months to the project. So 6 months and high cost for a 12-month, effectively, end of term of the contract. And so we delivered a smart hub with 4G and ADSL broadband services. In fact, it was 6 ADSL circuits went into this particular mix. 35 people in the office. So it was good most of the time. But you did occasionally get the phone call saying, oh, hang on a minute, why is everything stopped and it's ever so slow and the connectivity's gone really awful? But what we're doing on these links is actually analysing or recording who is actually using what across the link. And on investigation in this particular instance, we found that 3 people on site were streaming cricket. Was the actual sport. And then you're able to at least do 2 things. You can flag it, report it, and sort of change behaviour by saying, we know what you're doing, without it being draconian. Or if you have to get draconian, we could absolutely start setting policies that say either services like streaming sport or social media or gambling sites or whatever it is that you want to restrict, or just general internet browsing, you can restrict it down to either a very small bandwidth, or you can just ban it altogether, leaving the real bandwidth that you need to use for the business critical applications. You can set QoS policies to suit you. VoIP is typically done as the highest priority. It's not very bandwidth hungry, but it's quite sensitive. But after that, focus on your business applications and make sure they get to eat the bandwidth before other less value add kind of services. And that's something that we can do, on the fly. So as a managed service, where we're constantly working with the customers site by site to make sure that we can optimize how that bandwidth is being used at those sites. And where it's a good site and there's plenty of it, then less restrictions. Where it's remote and it's precious, a bit more restrictions. Time-consuming process. Parkstone, who are a ground services, roads and pavements business, their biggest bugbear was how much time they were spending on the phone trying to manage the likes of BT or Virgin Media to actually deliver services to site. So whilst delighted with the rapid site, delighted with the high availability, the biggest win in Parkstone's situation was no longer having to have one person almost dedicated 100% of their time to trying to manage the suppliers. That's something that we do day in, day out, not just for construction, for all of our customers. We have a little black book of tricks. We know the carriers very well. We're a big partner to them, and something that I believe we can do more efficiently than each of you trying to learn to do the same task. Very big for in this case for Interserve. So Interserve had a number of problems when they came to us around the whole site deployment. Sort of one of them, which was sort of 1 and 2. One is that they had a plethora of different solutions at different sites, and the local site managers were just going out and buying dongles or buying their own 3G routers. They were not to corporate policies. There was a high security risk. There was a lot of cost going through the business. At the end of each project, where were they? What happened to them? There was no management of it at all. So we worked with Interserve on 2 flavors of Smart Hub. We've got a large one for large sites, a small one for smaller sites. But one of the critical things for them was to make sure these assets were tracked, and so that we know where they are at any point in time. So they come with them a GPS tracker so that we can look and know where they are geographically in the world. Ring fence it so that if they move, we're alarmed, and we didn't expect this Smart Hub to be moved, and so what's happening, and manage it. So huge cost saving for the reuse and project after project, but also a very big tick for their green credentials, and that was important for a number of the contracts they were trying to win. I've said before, plug and play. The way this works is that we build the Smart Hub to specific customers, and quite often that includes the equipment that's inside it. So Barhale are very comfortable with a Zixel wireless access point. Interserve were insistent on a Cisco wireless access point. Galliford Try wanted 3 DSLs. Our standard build is 2 DSLs. So we work with the customer to decide what it is you actually want in terms of an asset list in the boxes, and then more importantly, they are then configured to your policies, so that is it going from site to internet breakout, or is all traffic routed to corporate and then breaking out if it needs to break out to corporate via your policies? Do you allow guest Wi-Fi's? Do you want separate SSIDs for guests? And so on and so forth. The principle being that then when the hub arrives, as I said before, plug and play, you just add power, ET phones home, you've now got a WAN link on your construction site completely under your control. So that's the technology side of it. You know, I talked before about we're a managed service business, and so I think of us as a service business that happens to be strong in technology, and it's the service that really makes the difference. So let me just talk you through how this service works for Smart Hub. So we've got a dedicated warehouse where the units are stored in between projects or when first built, ready for deployment. There's a number of things that will happen in the warehouse before they go out to site. Of course, they're checked. They're put on charge before they go, so the trackers are all fully charged, so that we're in control of the process. But it also means that it's not something that you have to worry about or have to have space for. An engineer will physically take the smart hub to site, make sure it's delivered, and again, horses for courses. You know, many construction companies have practical people on site and are very happy to do their own installations. It's relatively simple, but there's a little bit of work around the antenna. Other construction companies, again, like Interserve, are completely hands-off. They don't want to touch them. It's not their bag at all. It's our job to do that. So the key pieces of work that need to be done at the deployment is, of course, physically situating the smart hub relative to where the LAN ports, the printers, the whatever IT equipment is there, and then for the 4G to make sure that we've got a strong signal. So we're using external antenna on 5-meter cables, so they can go external because often it's in porta cabins, and we have the capability to do that piece of work to make sure that, you know, once ordered, you give us the coordinates, what's the addressing coordinates, and we'll deliver it and leave you with a working service within 48 hours. Depending on the nature of the project, if it's a longer term and a larger project, then yes, we then augment the initial 4G connections with the ground services. If it's a short and sharp and quick turnaround, perhaps this isn't required. Again, that's something we do in consultation, but we take care of getting the additional ground services or satellite services in to scale the project, to scale the connectivity in line with the project. We're 24/7 lights on, 365, so we're monitoring and looking for issues with the connections, or as I said before, tracking of the actual box itself. And at the end of the project, we'll do the reverse. The engineers will then decommission the smart hub, deliver it back to the warehouse where it will be cleaned down, rechecked, and made sure that we've now got that ready to go for the next project. So how does it work in that sense? So Bar Hill have a state of about 35 units, and they probably leave it so they've got maybe no less than 4 on the shelf ready for the next project. Interserve are probably up to about 50 units now. Same sort of principle, about 10% of coverage, so that you've always got the ability for the next rapid site that's required. And then tracked throughout the whole process. I've mentioned some of these along the way. Worked with many of the leading construction companies in the UK, and looking forward to doing more. Physically, that's how it looks like. Rugged box. We have a standard build, but then work with you to determine exactly what you would want to see. And then just to recap, Smart Hub is about helping construction companies deploy quickly, scale through the project, don't ever lose connectivity, manage the bandwidth through knowledge of who's doing what and control it if you have to, keep your assets and reuse them. Bar Hill now, I think their smart hubs are 6 years old and still going strong. Configured so that when they go to site, it just works. You plug it in and it just works. And fully managed so that you can concentrate on your business, not managing IT infrastructure. that's all from me in terms of the solution. I hope it's been useful. Delighted to take questions.
Thank you very much, Graham. Sorry about the glitch at the beginning there. I don't know what happened. It dropped out, but fortunately it came back again. So we're okay. But just to take on the poll questions now. I'll ask the first question. I'll just post this on the screen. Can you see that one?
Yeah.
Yeah?
I can see it.
Okay. Everybody can pull that one in. We're getting some answers come in there. Just give that another couple of seconds. Looks like everybody's answered. Okay, I'll close that one out, and I'll just share that. So, can you see the results there, Graham?
I can indeed. So,
what are your thoughts?
70%, either very important or quite important, and I'd say that's quite common. So, you know, it was only when I first started in this industry, probably 10 years ago, there was questions, oh, do we really need connectivity to construction sites? And within 3 short years, it was like, well, it's absolutely critical. And now it's sort of the first thing you think about, but surprisingly, very few companies I meet have actually cracked the problem, and that would concur with what I'm seeing there.
Sure. Okay, I'll move on to the next question. How important is it that the connectivity is reliable? Let me launch that one. Okay, can you see that one?
Yep, absolutely.
So we get about 70% saying quite important and 30% saying very important. Okay, I'll close that one out and post I'll share the results. Can you see that one, Graham?
Yeah. It's interesting. Again, it's interesting. So in different industries, we'd see that probably the other way around. And I understand that. You know,
yeah,
it's critical to get these sites connected, but is it every second? No. But you know, you can't go long periods without getting reconnected. So that makes sense.
Sure. Okay, thanks everybody for that one. The next question I've got here is, how useful is it to know what users and application data is traversing the site connectivity link? Let me launch that one. There we go. Can you see that one?
Yeah.
Okay, a couple of seconds. Close that one out. Share that.
There we go. That's not surprising. I suppose it's surprising that it's not a bit more on the what users are accessing, but the slow link, I think, is very prevalent in the construction, because often you are surviving on relatively small WAN links. Does that make sense?
Sure. Okay, and then the final poll question: do you agree you spend too much time trying to manage the service provider? Okay, should be able to see that one now. Okay, just give it a couple of seconds, close that one out.
Interesting.
Yeah. Can you see that?
Yeah, absolutely.
So 9% say there's got to take care of everything, and yeah,
90% say it's sometimes or always a problem. What I found, I think again in my travels, is that the larger construction companies often have framework agreements with the larger service providers.
Yeah.
I understand why that would be, but they typically are the least agile in this space. So, sort of, it makes sense when you see that.
Sure, yeah. Well, thanks everybody for taking part in those poll questions. What I'll do now is I'll just bring up the questions that were asked during the session. Okay. Apologies again on the audio at the beginning. I don't know what happened there. It just dropped out for a little while, but we got it back quite quickly. So on the first, I've got some questions here. How do your clients get on with satellite-only solutions with VoIP services? Graham?
So it's a fair question because satellite has quite high latency. So it's not a no. We've probably been successful with satellite only on sites where it's been small numbers of people. So we've had projects, say, on the Isle of Mull in Scotland, where there really wasn't any other option, but the site only had 4 people, and they were using Citrix from an IT point of view, and they were using VoIP phones, and successfully. A larger site, it becomes a problem, but what we would typically do is, and this is where it's not satellite only, but what we would try and do is channel different kinds of traffic to the right kind of connectivity. So email is great, or anything streaming, anything big files is great on satellite. Anything more chatty, so applications or VoIP, you'd want to put through either the 4G or the ground services.
Sure. I hope that that was from Paul Edwards. I hope that answers your question, Paul. The next question I've got here is to do with cost. What is the cost, and what regions is this service available? And that was from John Jerwicks. Not sure you're able to answer that question directly, Graham, but
it does depend. So again, let's just talk about the models. So some companies prefer a capex kind of model where they buy their own estate of Smart Hub, and then there's a monthly charge for the management and the data services. To buy the units, again, depends on the exact specification, but you're talking, in the £1,000 to £2,000 depending on the spec to buy them outright, and then with a monthly charge of probably 50 to 100 depending on the number and size of links that you want to add. Other companies will sign up to a 3-year sort of a lease purchase kind of agreement, so they spread over the period, and again budget between 150 and £250 a month.
Right. Okay. I hope that answers your question, John. If not, then get in touch, and maybe I could hook you up with Graham there. The next question I've got in is what service provider are they using? That was a question from Paul Edwards.
So again, we're an integrator. So we've got direct links with all of the main carriers here in the UK. So BT, Virgin, TalkTalk, Two-Way for satellite, Vodafone and EE for 4G, even some of the other aggregators, the Fluidators of this world, and some wireless carriers, Metronet in Manchester and the like. So the way we look at it is we're agnostic to the carrier, because we've got the brain in the Smart Hub on site paired to the brain in our own core network, which gives us the logical control and the logical view of what's going on, and we become agnostic to the underlying carrier. We actually prefer to use multiples. Comes back to this resilience. If we've got 2 DSLs, I would want to have carriers from 2 different circuits, from 2 different carriers, because they themselves have outages, and we're just minimizing the risk all of the time of a total outage.
Sure. Okay, thanks, Graham. Next question I've got up here is what is the most problematic issues in order to use Smart Hub on construction sites, considering the different generations on time?
I would say it's commercial. It's getting people to the table and going from a you know, from an interest to doing this. This works when we enter into a sort of a long-term relationship, not a short, sharp tactical hire. Issues in terms of delivering to site, it's relatively straightforward. You know, of course we can get sites without 4G, and I'm no magician. If there's no coverage, there's no coverage. But the issues I see is more about that initial engagement and getting people to buy into that leap of faith, if you will, of going from no relationship to a fairly entangled kind of relationship.
Okay, thank you. That question was from Rasha Suleiman. I hope that answered your question, Rasha. The next question I've got here is, do you cover all geographies? Are there any exceptions? And that's from Pramod Murji. Graham?
So our core expertise and our core relationships with carriers is UK. That having been said, we have absolutely deployed the same technology in all around the globe. So we've had sites in Canada, we've had sites in Singapore, we've got sites in the Middle East, we've had a whole range. The difference in the non-UK geographies is the 4G works the same, need local SIMs. We don't have the same direct relationship with the local carriers, but the principles absolutely work in any geography.
Okay, thank you, Graham. I haven't got any more questions have come in here, so without that, I think we'll move on to the next part. Thanks everybody for submitting your questions there.
Thank you.
Appreciated, yeah. Okay, so I've just got a couple of announcements to make, and the first one I've got here is the FIATech Leadership Forum, which takes place the 25th and 26th of October in Austin. I know some of you are already signed up for that, but please do have a look at the website. I mentioned at the beginning of the session about the productivity advancement targets, or the PATs as they're affectionately known. There will be lots of discussion and presentation material along with the PATs at the front of focus. So that's the 25th and 26th. The next one I've got here is the Comet Community Day. That takes place on the 30th of November, and the host for that this time is IFS, and that is in High Wycombe. The next announcement I've got here is on the 30th of October. It's Comet is having a Graduate and Apprentice Day. This happens every year. I say that's the 30th of October. It's an interactive day, workshops. Participants are very welcome to bring along their graduates and apprentices, but the places are limited. Now, you'll see a link on the far side of the screen there. Follow that link or get in touch with Harrison at the bottom and register your interest. Thank you for that. And the final one is to join the conversation with the social media. Join the community through LinkedIn for all announcements and follow-up discussion. One thing I will say, and I get asked a lot, is the recording going to be made available? Yes, it will be. Once it's uploaded, we then share it. You will get a link if you've registered, and I will make that available through YouTube. We do have a follow-up survey, which will go out shortly. If you could give us your feedback. And that is pretty much it. So I'd like to say thanks very much to Graham for putting the session together. Thanks to Vineet, who can't join us today, for his input too. And thanks to everybody for spending time with us on the call. Have a great day. Graham, have you got anything else to add?
Just reiterate the thanks. Thank you, Stuart, for inviting me to join in today, and thank you everybody for your participation.
Great. Thanks very much. Have a good day. Cheers. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.